Timothy J. Keller, The Prodigal God, Recovering the Heart of the Christian Faith. If you feel like your understanding of Christianity has become obscured, look no further than The Prodigal God, Recovering the Heart of the Christian Faith, by Timothy J. Keller. In this book, Keller delves into the widely known parable of the prodigal son and illuminates the crucial lessons it holds, exploring themes of sin, forgiveness, and God's unconditional love. As you delve into this summary, you will discover there's more to the story than you might have realized, and find inspiration to rethink traditional interpretations of sin and virtue. Expect to gain insights on the dangers of self-righteousness, recovering the lost connection with God, and the significance of feasts in the Bible.
The Parable of Forgiveness. The parable of the prodigal son portrays the story of a rich father and his sons. One of his sons disrespects him by asking for his share of inheritance and leaves. He spends all his money, ends up working in a pigsty, and realizes his mistake. The father welcomes him and throws a feast to celebrate his return, but the older son who has always obeyed the father feels bitter about the celebration. The parable is a lesson in forgiveness and acceptance. The Bible is a book that is known to many, and it teaches many lessons that are still applicable to this day. One such lesson is the lesson of forgiveness, which is portrayed in the parable of the prodigal son. The parable tells the story of a wealthy father who had two sons, one who was selfish and rash while the other was obedient and faithful. The younger son breaks the norms of society and asks for his share of inheritance even before the father's death. The father grants him his wish, and the son goes on a wild spending spree, eventually losing everything. After a few struggles, the son realizes his mistake and decides to go back to his father and repent. When the father sees him from a distance, he runs towards him and hugs him, throwing a feast to celebrate his return. The older son, who was working hard for his father, felt disrespected and angry about the celebration. The parable of the prodigal son teaches us the importance of forgiveness and acceptance. The father's actions portray the forgiving nature of humanity and how every human deserves a chance to right their wrongs. The father, who could have easily disowned his son, instead welcomed him back with open arms. This teaching is still applicable in today's world, where many people make mistakes, and some are quick to judge and condemn. The parable shows that we should be forgiving and accepting of others, especially when they show remorse for their mistakes. It also teaches us that people should not be judged based on their past mistakes or their societal standing. The parable of the immoral sons. In the book, the author discusses Jesus' parable of the prodigal son, emphasizing that the elder son who stayed home and fulfilled his duty was also immoral. While the younger son's sin was obvious, the elder son was serving his father with the expectation of gaining immense wealth and power. This transactional relationship with God is prevalent among those who consider themselves moral authorities. They put on a facade of righteousness, expecting rewards from God for their good conduct. In reality, they have ulterior motives, trying to seize power that doesn't belong to them. Ultimately, the key message is that we are all sinners, whether we uphold or break the rules, and we should focus on serving God for the love of it, without expecting anything in return. The parable of the two brothers. One brother's spiritual superiority blinds him to forgiveness and empathy, while the other's humility and self-awareness bring him closer to salvation. Fear-based faith and self-righteousness can lead to societal issues like racism and classism. In the parable of the two brothers, one brother's lack of self-awareness leaves him spiritually worse off than his younger brother, who has hit rock bottom but has the humility to seek forgiveness and analyze his behavior. The older brother's blind faith in his righteousness and inability to forgive demonstrates how believing oneself to be superior robs individuals of their humility and ability to connect with others. This narrow-minded way of thinking can lead to larger societal issues such as racism and classism. The parable serves as a warning against fear-based faith, which may initially provide motivation but lacks a strong foundation for a fulfilling life of devotion. On the other hand, worshiping God for the love of it and being true to oneself and one's faith can lead to a fulfilling and intimate connection with God. Overall, the parable encourages self-awareness and the ability to admit when something is wrong as the first steps toward finding one's way back to a meaningful connection with God. Finding home through Jesus Christ. The theme of exile in the Bible tells us that we are all searching for home. Though we may feel lost, the parable of the prodigal son teaches us that God's love is unconditional and that there's always a way back. By sacrificing himself on the cross, Jesus gave up everything for us to come home to God. The symbolism of feasts in the Bible. In The Prodigal God by Timothy Keller, the author delves into the symbolism behind feasts in the Bible. These sumptuous banquets featuring aged wine are not just for celebration, but a representation of the sensual and material world that God cares about deeply. Contrary to popular belief, God doesn't want us to sacrifice sensual pleasures, as He created a world filled with sights, smells, and tastes that bring us joy. Thereby, He wants us to feel and experience His love and generosity. It's not enough to just feel our faith, we must align our beliefs with our actions and come together in community to know Him fully. Joining the feast is an invitation to take your place at the table of spirituality.
In summary, The Prodigal God explores the powerful parable of the prodigal son to reveal humanity's struggle with sin and our complex relationships with God. Keller demonstrates that there is more than one way to sin and that we must recognize our own shortcomings to truly embrace God's grace. Remember, both the younger and the older brother made mistakes and held distorted views of their relationship with their father, who symbolizes God. Regardless of the sins committed, God's love and forgiveness remain constant and unconditional. The feasts in the Bible illustrate how much God values the material world and wants us to experience His love and generosity. By aligning our beliefs, actions, and community, we can find our way home and join the divine feast that awaits us.